In the middle of the desert, Catherine Dean rides a horse that, when she dismounts, turns into a statue. She continues on her path alone until she finds a boy named Edward Baines, who reflects the light of a medallion. Catherine reminds him that they had promised to go sailing, but the boy hesitates. Behind her, an old, wrecked ship appears, which disappoints her. Then Edward shows her a smaller boat, which satisfies her, although he warns her that Moklok said it was broken. Catherine reminds him that Moklok does not exist, but the boy insists that he is the boogeyman. As Catherine takes the boat, she hears a shriek behind her and sighs in disappointment when she sees that Edward has transformed into a monster. She presses a microchip in her hand and wakes up at the Campbell Center. From the observation room, doctors Henry West and Miriam Kent analyze her brain activity. Miriam checks on both Catherine and the comatose Edward, who is connected to the device that allows Catherine to enter his mind. Later, Mrs. Baines informs them that her husband wants to transfer Edward to a hospital, canceling the treatment. Henry protests, reminding her of the years invested in the project, but Catherine understands that they doubt her abilities as a child psychologist. Baines, who finances the research, points out that there has been no progress and that there is no proof that her conversations with his son are not merely hallucinations. Meanwhile, Karl Rudolf Starger arrives at an abandoned structure and approaches a glass cell where a woman has been drowned. Back at the center, the team is granted 6 more months to treat Edward, so Catherine proposes reversing the connection and allowing the boy to enter her mind. She recalls that in her social work, removing children from their environment helped them understand that things could be different. Miriam fears that Edward will be frightened by not understanding where he is, and also worries about how this might affect Catherine's mind. That night, Starger bathes the body of his latest victim while his dog, Valentine, barks nearby. He then suspends himself from the ceiling using hooks driven into his skin, and while watching a recording in which the woman begs for help as the water covers her, he becomes aroused and masturbates over the corpse. The next morning, authorities discover the body thrown from a bridge, identifying her as the 7th victim of the same killer. Detective Cole shows the body to FBI agents Ramsey and Novick. Ramsey notices a metallic collar on the victim's neck, the mark by which the killer claims them as his property. Meanwhile, Starger watches a woman named Julia in a park, but suffers a severe headache and takes aspirin. Later, the agents discover that the condition of the corpse matches that of the previous victims, except for a dog hair found on the body. They analyze it and determine that it contains no melanin, meaning the animal is albino. Since all the victims were bleached after death, Novick deduces that the killer has an obsession with purity, and an albino dog fits his profile. That night, Julia backs up her car and hears a dog's whimper. In the mirror, she sees Valentine behind the vehicle. Believing she has run him over, she gets out to check, which Starger uses as an opportunity to capture her. The next day, Novick orders a search for the dog and a truck whose tire tracks match those found on the bridge. He assumes the killer wants to be discovered, since he left both the body and the dog's hair as clues. They later receive a report about Julia's disappearance, and while visiting her parents, Ramsey obtains a report from a breeder who sold an albino puppy 3 years earlier to a man who drove a truck identical to the one in the case. Unaware that the police are heading to his house, Starger takes a bath but suffers an epileptic seizure in the bathtub. His medicine bottle is empty, so he crawls to the kitchen in search of more. The SWAT team storms his house and finds him unconscious on the floor. While transporting him to the hospital, Ramsey reports that Julia was not there, but that they did find the basement where the killer prepared the bodies, along with recordings of his victims. Meanwhile, Julia wakes up trapped inside a glass cell, being watched by cameras. At the hospital, doctors diagnose Starger with well-end schizophrenia, caused by a virus that remains dormant until activated by trauma. Only he knows where Julia is, but his mind is lost. The agents decide to transfer him to the Campbell Center so Catherine's team can help. There, they explain that Starger kept his victims alive for 40 hours before drowning them. Novick points out that the water filling the cell is automatic, meaning Julia will die that very night if they do not find her. While Miriam prepares Catherine and Starger, Henry explains to the agents how his neural transfer system works, capable of mapping the mind and projecting it into another person. Ramsey observes that they have 3 control stations, and Henry clarifies that they previously sent 2 psychologists into the patient's mind, but Edward only responded to Catherine, so they continued with her alone. The procedure begins, and Catherine enters Starger's mind. Catherine first sees a group baptizing a child in a lake before finding herself inside a tunnel, where a black dog shakes a red liquid from its fur. She then sees a boy running down a long staircase and follows him until she finds him petting a horse. When she tries to approach him, he pulls away, so Catherine calms him by telling him about Edward. The young Starger watches the clock surrounding him with fear and suddenly pushes her just before a sheet of glass falls, shattering the horse into pieces. The boy flees and Catherine follows him, but stops when she discovers several glass cells containing women inside. She touches a mechanism and activates gears that make the bodies move like marionettes. As she moves forward, one of the cells opens and a large woman comes out and knocks her down. She drags Catherine into a throne room where Starger appears, descending wrapped in a velvet mantle. He demands to know where she came from, and Catherine, terrified, presses the microchip in her hand to wake up. Miriam helps calm her down, while Henry warns Novik that Starger's mind is dangerous. If Catherine begins to believe that world is real, her body could suffer severe consequences. Meanwhile, the water begins to fill Julia's cell again, although it stops intermittently. Desperate, she prays and cries without hope. Later, Novik approaches Catherine, who is visiting the boy Edward, and asks her if she believes she can save Starger. She replies that everyone has a part of themselves they do not want to show. When entering a patient's mind, she can feel those secrets, but in Starger's mind, she felt something she never wanted to experience. Outside, Catherine confesses that she cannot understand how a killer thinks. Novik admits that he cannot either, and recalls that he used to be a prosecutor. Once, he failed to convict a man who had abused a little girl. The man went free and later killed her. Since then, Novik decided to join the FBI, convinced that this way he could stop the guilty before they did it again. Catherine remembers that the child inside Starger tried to reach her, so she believes she might be able to convince him to reveal Julia's whereabouts. She plans to enter his mind again, but this time with the dog Valentine in the room to calm the killer on a subconscious level. Just as they are about to begin, the power goes out. When the generators come back on, Henry asks Catherine to check the circuit breaker. Dazed, she stands up and notices that she has become smaller. When she looks back, she sees her own body still connected to the machine. Suddenly, she finds herself inside a glass cage. When she opens the top hatch, she falls and is left hanging upside down. She manages to free herself and falls into a pit, suspended as if floating in water. Valentine approaches her, and she asks him to take her to Starger. Behind the dog, she sees the young Starger enter a house, so she follows him. Inside, she finds him hurriedly washing dishes. To comfort him, she gives him the same medallion Edward had and tells him to reflect the light in the mirror if he ever needs to see her. As he takes it, they accidentally knock over a plate and break it. Frightened, the boy hides Catherine in a closet just as his father enters. Through a crack, she watches as the man yells at and beats his son for breaking the dishes. Catherine tries to open the door, but cannot. When she looks down, she sees that she is standing on a basin filled with water and eels. When she looks back, she witnesses how the boy's stepmother weakly tries to defend him, but the father humiliates her by reminding her that she is not his real mother. A flash of light makes Catherine turn around. The closet is empty, leaving only a photograph of a room. Then she hears the boy's screams as his father punishes him for playing with dolls. Catherine cries helplessly as she hears the man take an iron and press it against his son, who screams in pain. When she looks again, the inside of the closet has changed into the room from the photograph, where the adult Starger is removing organs from a woman's body. Catherine cautiously approaches, and he asks her what she is doing there. She tells him she wants to help him, but he mocks and insults her. Catherine replies that he sounds just like his father, which enrages him even more. Starger recalls when his father submerged him during his baptism, causing a seizure and the sensation of drowning while everyone watched. Later, when they arrived home, His father beat him until he broke his ribs and jaw. Catherine laments that he suffered so much, but he justifies it by saying that his father was simply stronger. She insists that no one should ever be treated that way, which causes Stargher to lose control. With her finger on the microchip, Catherine asks him where Julia is, but he disappears into the shadows and reappears in a demonic form, throwing her to the ground and placing a metallic collar around her neck. At the center, Miriam and Henry detect a dangerous alteration in Catherine's brain waves. They attempt to sever the connection but fear harming her. Miriam proposes connecting herself to bring Catherine back, but Henry refuses due to the risk. Meanwhile, the water begins to fill Julia's cell again, and she pounds on the glass begging for help until she notices some pipes in the ceiling. At the center, Novik volunteers to enter Stargher's mind to rescue Catherine, convinced that he knows the killer well enough after investigating him for so long. Before connecting him, Miriam advises him to use a personal memory of Catherine, something that will help her remember who she is and break the killer's control. Once inside, Novik awakens in a field where three women stare at the sky with their mouths open. Suddenly, they ask him about his son, a monstrous being who was taken away by his father. A light blinds him, and when he turns around, he sees the young Stargher shining with Catherine's medallion. The boy runs away, and Novik follows him until he finds Catherine chained to a bed. Novik approaches Catherine and removes the mask from her face. To his surprise, she begins to seduce him, but while he is distracted, Stargher places a bag over his head. When Novik awakens, he is chained on a platform while Catherine watches. Stargher then approaches and stabs him in the stomach with a pair of scissors, then pulls out part of his intestine and hangs it on spikes above him. Furious and in pain, Novik insults him, but Stargher delights in his screams. Desperate to make Catherine react, Novik reminds her of her younger brother, who died after 6 months in a coma. Slowly, Catherine's empty smile fades. She takes a knife and stabs Stargher, causing the entire world around them to distort. Novik awakens alongside Catherine in another place. She sees the young Stargher standing in front of a luxurious version of the glass cell where a woman is dancing. Catherine deduces that this is where he keeps his victims, so she approaches the boy and asks him where the real cell is. Meanwhile, Novik notices engravings in the corners of the glass, similar to those he had seen in Stargher's basement. He pulls Catherine away and tells her that he already knows how to find Julia and that they need to leave. But Catherine resists, still trying to save the child. As Novik drags her away, the young boy steps back and an adult Stargher descends to take him away. Both awaken back at the center just as more water begins to fill Julia's cell. Novik quickly calls Cole and orders him to check the machinery Stargher used in the basement. Ramsey notices that Novik is injured, but he focuses solely on saving Julia. Cole discovers a logo on the machine and identifies it as belonging to Carver Industrial. Meanwhile, Miriam goes to see Catherine, but Henry informs her that Novik has left without completing his medical checks. Catherine assures them she is fine and asks them to find him. However, Novik has already boarded a helicopter, ignoring Ramsey's warnings. After Miriam leaves, Catherine locks herself in the operating room and reviews the notes on Stargher. Henry tries to stop her, but she locks him out and activates the machine, reversing the process to bring Stargher into her own mind. There, she presents herself as a maternal figure to the young Stargher. The boy asks if he can stay with her, but Catherine sadly explains that it does not work that way. Disappointed, the boy transforms into his adult version and recalls when he found an injured bird. To protect it from his father's punishment, he ended up killing it himself. Catherine understands what he is implying and tells him that she cannot do the same to him. Stargher turns back into a child and murmurs that it no longer matters. Suddenly, insects begin to cover him and the surroundings darken. The demonic version of Stargher rises from the water in front of them. Meanwhile, Novik receives Cole's report. They track down the original owner of the machine, whose property had been seized by the state. The owner later hired Stargher to seal it, giving him access to the equipment. Upon learning the location, Novik heads to the abandoned site. Inside Catherine's mind, she confronts Stargher's demon, shoots him with a crossbow, and stabs him in the chest. But he laughs, reminding her that the child within him feels the same pain because they are one and the same. Novik finally arrives at the site but does not see the cell. He notices a duct releasing steam and follows it to an underground hatch. There he finds the cell where Julia is still breathing through a tube she had broken. Novik smashes the glass with a pipe and manages to rescue her. At the same time, Catherine returns to her maternal form and holds the young Starger in her arms. He asks her to save him, just as he tried to save the bird. With sorrow, Catherine carries him into the water and submerges him until the child fades away and the real Starger dies. Days later, Novik meets Catherine in front of Starger's house and asks about her plans to let Edward enter her mind. She assures him she will not harm him, but Novik clarifies that this is not what concerns him. When she asks what is wrong, he confesses that he still feels confused and that in the official report they stated that his memory was triggered under influence, omitting the experiment at the center. Later, Catherine is granted permission to connect her mind with Edward. In her inner world, she transforms the desert into a forest full of trees, and both walk toward each other, symbolizing a new beginning.